Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to my session on 2023 trends in DE&I. Just had to check which one it was. Just wanted to start off, just really helpful for me. Can I just get a feel for who's in the room? Hands up if you're an in-house recruiter. Awesome. Majority. HR. Supplier. Awesome. So quite knowledgeable base. Thanks all for coming. And I think there's going to be room for questions at the end. But if anything's burning or you really disagree with something I say, just jump in and we'll see if we can have a debate as we go. Just as a bit of an introduction, I'm Felix. I'm one of the founders and co-CEOs of a business called Instant Impact. And we are a UK headquartered but global business. We are looking to reinvent the world of recruitment and RPO. I know maybe a little over ambitious, but hey, let's just go for it. What we do is we provide our clients with embedded talent functions. So that's everything from an awesome team of in-house recruiters all the way through to best recruitment marketing on the market, and then really critically for today's session, provide them with subject matter experts on everything from diversity through to recruitment marketing, onboarding, really everything that surrounds and informs the world of talent and rec that we all love so much. Before I jump into the main presentation as well, what I wanted to do, and the presentation is going to be very forward-looking into 2023, I always think it's important to start with a bit of a stock take of where we are now. A lot of the presentation today is going to be looking at some really depressing stats and figures and sort of how far we have to go and how big the challenge is. But I also think it's good to sort of stop and recognize how far this topic has come in the last sort of 20, 30 years. Obviously, slowly, too slowly for a lot of us. But I think by almost every measure that I know, it is better to be an underrepresented group, almost any of the underrepresented group in the workplace today than it was at the turn of the century. And I think that often gets lost in some of the discourse. If you ever want any evidence for this, I was watching Bridget Jones over the weekend for like the 9th time. But on a serious note, it did shock me, some of the workplace norms that they talk about there. And of course, maybe it's not a completely accurate historical record, but I almost think that some of those scenes wouldn't be allowed today. So if anyone wants an excuse to watch Bridget Jones during working hours, you got it now, including you guys. Well done. Fab. Well, it's some of that subject matter expertise that we work with our clients on that we're going to be dipping into at the moment. We work with all of our clients really care about improving their business and making them a more diverse and inclusive place to work. So it's some of that thinking, some of those sort of trend analysis that are looking to go into today. To continue the stock take though, although we have come a long way, Uzi, it's not working. Although we've come a long, oh no, it's all gone wrong. Although we've come a long way, we still have an awfully long way to go. I can kind of do a bit, but let me know when I can click. So you only need to look as far as, actually any representatives from a FTSE 100 today? Cool, good to know. I can say whatever I want. You only need to look at the leadership of sort of the most powerful, most valuable businesses in the UK just to see quite how far we have to go. So we're still looking at 5% of FTSE 100 coming from an ethnic minority background. Really shocking when you look at sort of that figures over 20% in the UK and over 40% in London, where a lot of these businesses are headquartered. 7% are female, again, comparing to 51%, I think, of the UK. Now, these numbers are pretty horrific. They're even worse when you compare them to the fact that 9% of FTSE CEOs are white and call either David or Steve. I both love and absolutely hate that stat. So we have an absolute million miles to go when it comes to the leadership of the organizations. And I think there are metrics like board members that have come a lot further. But I really think that one of the things that is most indicative of diversity is right, that sort of CEO leadership, those most powerful, most influential, highest paid positions as well. There's no reason why I've chosen real estate as an industry to spotlight on at the moment, aside from what I wanted to show is the maturity of businesses in different industries. Really, there is a big contrast between different industries. So you might be able to look at a company like real estate, and within this, I'm looking at construction, the built environment as well. So it's weighted towards men in terms of the volume at a sort of macro level. But if you zoom into some roles, so for example, quantity surveyors, you're looking at 95% male populations, people working in those roles who are men, 27% from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. That's worse than their colleagues or comparables in professional or financial services. And then you come on to the really worrying backgrounds, 1.2% of people in an entire industry coming from ethnic minority backgrounds. And this is one of the really big growth, in a lot of ways, recession-proof industries in the UK. And a shocking 70% of those people have encountered racism and discrimination at work. So these are the sort of things that, if we sort of stock take at the end of 2022, that we've got ahead of us and that we're looking to tackle. But this is all about 2023. We know about a lot of those trends that are going on. A lot of thought's been put into gender parity, and ever since the coronavirus, ever since the social justice movement after the murder of George Floyd, a lot of focus has been put on ethnic minorities as well. Those, I think, have been the two big waves of DE&I focus, certainly in this country, in the United States. We're expecting a few sort of trends that I just thought would be interesting to talk about at the moment. The first is across the DE&I agenda, across the sort of campaigns and strategies that happen here, we're expecting to see an increased level of urgency and an increased expectations to actually have results. And this is going to be driven by two key shifts. First off, changing demographics. And again, two things that we're looking at here. First off, by 2025, 75% of the workforce are going to be millennials or Gen Z. So what that means for this particular area, in our opinion, at Instant Impact, is, first of all, the expectations of those generations are really different. So if you look at millennials, and even more so Gen Z, whether you're coming from an underrepresented group or you're coming from or not, everyone has a much bigger emphasis on a business's ESG, and within that, their approach to diversity and inclusion. So if companies don't adapt and adopt strategies to improve their diversity, not only will they struggle to employ people from underrepresented groups, they're also going to struggle to employ and retain people from all groups. So it's going to be a sort of adapt or die for hiring managers in this area if you're looking at a sort of 5-10 year time horizon, because it's just going to be table stakes. Businesses that haven't really taken strategies and approaches to DE&I, they're really going to struggle with their entire workforce. The other issue here is that millennials are going to make up more and more of the senior decision-making positions. So as that generation takes more and more influential roles, it's going to be easier and easier to get the sort of strategies that we all think are obvious, but for some reason are really difficult to get signed off at board level. That's going to get easier and easier as people who've grown up with DE&I as the norm start taking those decision-making positions. The other demographic change I think is really interesting is we're operating with an aging and a constricting workforce. So 1 in 5 people in the workforce today are over the age of 50, which means that in the next 20 years, you'd expect 9 million people to leave the UK's workforce. And that's 9 million of the most skilled, most experienced workers. And that's because they're going to be retiring. CIPD study came out. They're expecting about 8 million people to be added to the workforce over that same time period. So that's people coming out of school, coming out of university, and people getting visas or immigrating to this country. So unless something serious changes with our immigration policy, unless I don't think that's particularly likely given the current status quo, we've got a 1 million employee shortfall in a labour market that's already incredibly tight. So it's another adapt or die situation. If hiring managers want to fill roles at their organization, they're going to have to start thinking more outside of the box, start thinking more flexibly, start opening up to flexible talent pools, for example, job shares, maybe talent from overseas as well, sponsoring visas as an organization, or maybe even opening offices, opening up to remote-only employees. All of these sorts of strategies that have been proven time and time again to be great for diversity. So let's take the example of flexible working. If you're looking to hire more people from socioeconomically deprived areas, if you're able to have them working remote, it's really easy, for example, to have someone in, think of a traditionally deprived area, a lot of the areas in sort of rural Northern Ireland, for example, who couldn't commute here in Birmingham to get a job. If they're able to dial in remotely, you're able to open yourself up to a much broader talent pool, and that's really, really exciting. Let alone being able to hire people from different geographies as well. And again, if companies aren't opening themselves up to this, I think for those people who raise their hands as in-house recruiters, we've all seen talent pools tightening. Whether you're hiring for a call center job or whether you're hiring for a head of, I don't know, IT implementation, everything's getting tighter, and we're really expecting that trend to continue. The other element that's going to increase the sort of business case, if you will, behind adapting diversity and inclusion strategies is going to be supply chain scrutiny. This is really coming from it being easier and easier, and there are a couple of businesses out there. I think one's called EcoVadis, or those sort of businesses like B Labs and the B Corp movement, where it's going to become easier for organizations, whether they're large or small, to be able to put their ESG and DE&I credentials online, and to be able to prove beyond sort of what policies you have, how impactful you are and how much you care about diversity as an organization. And we're expecting more and more large companies and government organizations to apply the same rigor that they do internally to their supply chain. So what we're expecting to happen is that in order to win the really big tenders, the big money, the big profit centers, companies are going to have to really do more to prove how seriously they've taken DE&I in the past, and that's going to lend a bit more commercial weight, a bit behind the push towards DE&I. So it's a fantastic, we're expecting 2023 to 2025 to be a fantastic time to really get these new strategies and new plans underway and get them signed off at board level. So as I mentioned before, I think the story of the DE&I movement so far really, really reductively has started off with women in the workplace, and over the last sort of 3 to 5 years has focused, in addition to that, on ethnic minorities in the workplace as well. And we're expecting that those, I guess, streams of focus to become more complex and get added to as we move into 2023. We're expecting a big push to be on neurodiversity. Companies for a long time have said, we really want to hire people who think differently to the normal people, to the people who are currently in the business, but haven't seen a lot of effective strategies to bring people in who are neurodivergent. I think this is really well shown by the fact we've got 700,000, a huge population of people with autism in the UK, 700,000 people, and only 22% of them are currently in employment. That just shows how ineffective some of the strategies, some of the early moves in this area have been. And people who are neurodiverse, it's much more common than many people think. So 1 in 10 people 1 in 10 people have some form of dyslexia, and 8.7% of people have ADHD at some point in their life. And a lot of, obviously, both of those things operate on a really wide spectrum. A lot of people with dyslexia, so I'm dyslexic, a lot of people like me have gone through their lives coming up with various masking strategies, different ways of making it through a world that's not made for the way that our brains are wired. And I don't have particularly serious dyslexia, so I've always been able to, well, to different levels, always been able to mask it. But it's businesses that make small, well, maybe not even small, but businesses that put measures in place to help us bring our full selves to work, really unlock a level of creativity, productivity, and loyalty that can be incredibly, well, can be awesome. And I think and people with ADHD being able to provide, generally tend to be much more easily distracted. So being able to provide quiet areas that they can go and work, being more open to home working, these things are really, really powerful. And they don't cost the world. They just require a bit of flexibility. And as in-house recruiters, as recruiters and talent specialists, there are some steps that we can take and that we can encourage our hiring managers to take that can be really powerful here. So just to go into the process, I think a lot of people who are neurodivergent don't do as well at school and university with their exams. I spent most of my childhood thinking I was a bit of a moron. Jury's still out on that one. But helping helping hiring managers to understand that, to put less of a focus, or ideally no focus at all, on grades that people get in academics. We've had some really great success with some of our clients replacing the CV with work sample tests instead. So we can't let that unconscious bias we sort of prevent that unconscious bias from seeping in, and then we also make sure that we're building the assessment process around the individual. I'll give you another example of that. A lot of people with autism can find unstructured face-to-face interviews or video interviews very difficult, and that's because a lot of people with autism find it difficult to read social cues. I think probably the extreme of this is, hopefully we don't have too many processes in the room that have this, but the team beer as like a final stage. Like, let's see what a good bloke you are and whether you fit in with the organization at the moment. I mean, imagine going into that situation if you found it difficult to build quick rapport and you knew that about yourself, or if you found it difficult to read social cues. I think it would feel like running across a minefield blindfolded. Just absolutely a terrifying experience for some people. So if your role doesn't require that in-person interaction and doesn't require that much teamwork and doesn't require quick rapport, really help your hiring managers understand how detrimental putting those things into the assessment process can be, and just provide as much flexibility and support among there. In fact, I'd be really interested in the room. Sorry, I'm a hands up kind of guy. I'm actually a big clapper guy, but I've been told by my team that that'd be really awkward. In the room, how many businesses here in your recruitment processes will alter your recruitment processes for people who are neurodivergent at the moment? Oh, great to see if you're about a sort of generous 50-50. But I think that's going to become more and more of a focus, and it's going to help you tap into talent that thinks a little differently, and that can really add value to your organization. So I think that's a really exciting one. Sorry, Uzi, do you mind? I'll have a drink of water while this is happening. Should have done a show of hands while I was trying. The next area that we're expecting to see, and it's related in many ways, but we're expecting businesses to be putting more and more of a focus on hiring candidates with disabilities, and for there to be more of a bit of a groundswell of pressure on businesses to put more effort into making themselves more inclusive places to work. For people with disabilities. There are, and I think this is another area as well where it's remarkable how little effort is required to make your organization, to make your organization a more inclusive place to work for people with disabilities. I'm going to throw some more stats at you. So the employment rate for disabled people, and this is with a huge range of different disabilities, is only 51% in this country. And that compares to just above 80% for people without disabilities. So there's a really big delta between employment. And we at Instant Impact, we've been through this journey recently of the government's scheme Disability Confident, to show to both our business and also candidates with disabilities that we're a really welcoming place for them to work. And although I didn't do it, I heard that it was a really straightforward process, loads of support. And I just wanted to share some of those steps that we've taken with you today, and you'll see just how straightforward some of them are. Sorry. So the first thing we did is we, and this seems like such a small piece, but we have made it clear on our careers page and all of our jobs that we are keen to hire candidates with disabilities, and that we're willing to make reasonable accommodations and changes to our assessment process for those who are disabled. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? It sounds pretty reasonable. But one of the things that we understood, and I was speaking to a friend of mine who works at a company called Even Break, which is a job board that specializes in candidates with disabilities. And she said, Felix, you got to understand, people with disabilities are so used to being discriminated against in the assessment process. They're so used to never hearing back after they say that they've got a disability and saying what it is, that in a lot of cases, if they don't see something like this, they just won't bother applying. It comes from a place of fear, and sadly, it comes from a place of bad experiences with bad employers. So this is one really simple, whether you're doing the disability confident bit or not, it's just a really easy change you can make. Second, we made sure that we were speaking to our current team, people who were neurodiverse actually, and people who had disabilities, and we asked them what they would want to see if they were applying from now. Learned a huge amount, got different perspectives, and also what's really important is we made sure that the disabled population at Instant Impact felt like they were part of this journey, as they absolutely were. Bearing that in mind, though, we didn't assume that the challenges that our current employees faced would be the same as potential new candidates. So we make sure that if we do come across candidates who need additional support from us, we make sure that we're providing it and that we're tailoring that to the individual, because everyone's not the same. And then the final piece here is that once we came up with all of those processes, we trained the team. And being the amazing, awesome people that we are at Instant Impact, I mean, and I'm sure all of the businesses here, because who wouldn't be on board with this? Everyone was hungry to learn, hungry to see how they could help, and got on board really quickly. So if there's one thing you guys do, it's not a huge amount of work. This is a great scheme and something that I really recommend getting on board with. The last trend that we're going to go through here is one of increased transparency, and specifically going to be talking about salary transparency. This has really come out of the gender and ethnicity pay gap reports that people have been putting out. And I think the frustration that a lot of businesses have felt at how slow progress has been in both of those areas. And studies have been done that have shown that simply publishing the salary range that you have on offer with a job, and most of the studies are to do with gender on this one rather than ethnic minorities, but essentially showed that just by putting the salary range on there, it was the difference between the salaries that women asked for and the salaries that men asked for were greatly reduced. I mean, such an easy shift to make that has a really big impact on a really worrying trend in our society. And I don't think this is going to be one of these things which is pushed just by businesses as a whole. We do a fair bit of work in New York State, well, in the US, but in New York State, for example, they're a bit of a trailblazing state when it comes to this. For a while, it's been illegal to ask candidates for what salary they're on at the moment. And they've just, I think, a week or 2 weeks ago, have made it illegal to post a job without a salary range on it. So anyone that does US recruitment, I think that's something that we're expecting to see spread across other states. And there are already, oh God, I can't remember what the acronym is for the, I don't know, it's still Department of Works and Pensions, I think. Yeah, DWP. They've got a pilot going on at the moment, focusing on companies that are putting salary ranges in, and they're tracking it over time. And I wouldn't be surprised if it became legislation in the UK over the next year or so. So I think that's really exciting. I think that's going to really help to drive meaningful change in both pay gap areas. And I just think it's a good shift. But the vast majority of businesses aren't ready for this. What do I mean by that? If your organization doesn't have clear salary bandings across the organization already, if there are big disparities between people who are working at different levels, it could be really, really jarring to publish your salaries online. So I'd recommend now start having conversations about whether your organization would be happy to publish salaries across different offices, across different geographies, because that may well be something that you have to look into by force rather than by choice. Well, that sounded worse than it was. Anyway, you know what I mean. Cool. That was the final trend. So just really looking at just a bit of a summary. The great time to adopt these sorts of strategies, because there's going to be commercial, there's going to be generational, and there's going to be sort of a need priority behind a lot of the changes that we're seeing going forwards. A lot of the strategies that a lot of us have been pushing for so far, I don't know, over the last 5 years, structured interviewing, objective measures in assessment processes, early careers programs, all of that good stuff. That's going to become table stakes. It's going to become expected, and now is the time to act. And I hope you found that interesting. And I hope there are some questions. Thank you. Hello. Do you want the?
No, it's fine. I work in the construction industry, so we're trying to be a bit more inclusive, kind of disability-wise as well. But obviously, a lot of the jobs we recruit for are very physical and demanding jobs. Got any advice on kind of trying to not make an empty promise, if that makes sense? I don't want to put on our website like disability inclusive and then get lots of people applying for a job that's physically maybe
That's an awesome.
to do, if that makes sense.
That's an awesome question. Did you guys hear that? All right. Yeah. Awesome question. So I think the first thing to say is that you can be disability inclusive within the bounds of only hiring people for roles that they can physically do. So it's not you are still disability inclusive if you say, actually, well, you know what, this is going to require physical work and physical labor, and you're climbing up building sites and you're wheelchair bound. That's a fine thing to say whilst being disability inclusive, as long as you have an open conversation with them and say, well, have you considered these roles which, you know, might be more suited to you? And I think this is a concern that we get asked quite a lot. There's no reason why someone who is wheelchair bound would apply for a role that requires the use of walking up job sites. You know, they want they're all humans. They want to be doing a job that they can do really, really well. So my instinct is that you won't have that problem. But even if you do, you can advise them into the roles that they'd be more suitable for and still be disability inclusive. Oh, hello. ESG is environmental social governance, I believe. But it's everything including your sustainability policy, your charity work, your DE&I, everything around being a business for more than just profit. Any other questions? Oh, hello.
My last question is around technology. So do you see recruitment tech shifting towards helping solve this problem around 2023 and beyond?
Did you guys hear that? Great. Yes, absolutely. I think recruitment technology is a huge part to play in the journey of DE&I. I think for one, there are a couple of key things that the right technology provides that's really important. So first is it can build in objectivity into what is by its very nature quite a subjective process. So building in using technology to score and to measure performance is really invaluable to an inclusive recruitment process. And what you really want to get to is to use technology, the combination of technology and structured interviews to end with a candidate score. And really what you're doing is you're hiring the candidates that have scored the best rather than the candidates who have, they have the best gut feel at the end of the day. The other thing it does is it makes recruitment it makes it more accessible. So to my point earlier, if you can build in, I know you're a video interview guy, but if you can build in video interviewing, I'm not meaning to plug, I just think it's relevant, into your process, it makes it much more easy to interview people where they are at their convenience rather than dragging them into their office, particularly if you've been successful at building in remote recruitment models as well. And there was a final one, what have I said? And then the final one, which is really, really important, is it makes your DE&I strategies trackable and you can see whether you're being successful or not. So one of the things that we do with our clients or where their GDPR professionals will let us is we try and do a survey to understand the demographics of people applying at the beginning of the process. We do it at the middle and we do it at the end. And that really helps us use data to uncover where our process is unfairly disadvantaging people from particular demographic groups. Fab, looks like we're questioned out. Thank you so much for joining today. This is me. I think that's my email address and number, and that's our website. And yeah, looking forward to answering any questions you guys get. We're over there. We're a really friendly bunch.